Hey guys, first regardsman here, and I'll be talking about the brand new Terminator Sorcerer boss in Space Marine 2 patch 14 and breaking down his lore, moveset, and the best ways to approach this boss. Now, this was on the public test server for patch 14, so some things will probably be tweaked on this boss to make him easier in the future, since at the moment he is kind of cracked. He does a stupid amount of damage and has incredibly long melee combos that do not give you a lot of opportunities to actually gunstrike him, and if he does wind up getting distance on you, his range attacks are even more brutal. But we're going to go through all of that here today because despite him being arguably the hardest boss in Space Marine 2, there are some ways to make him significantly easier to defeat. But before we get into the moveset of this boss, let's talk about what a Chaos Terminator Sorcerer even is. I have seen a ton of players confused why this boss is even a Terminus because he does not look all that imposing compared to the normal Extremis Terminators we have in the game already, but trust me when I say he is significantly more powerful than you'd expect given his stature, as the Thousand Suns are the Psyker or Space Wizard Chaos Legion that had some serious mutation problems throughout their history, with the vast majority of the Legion well on their way to becoming Chaos Spawn. So to solve the mutation issue, their greatest Psyker Armin actually cast a warp spell to stop the flesh change entirely, which solved the issue for the most part, though it also accidentally turned the vast majority of the Legion into warp dust automatons. And those are the Marines you predominantly see in this game, including the Extremis Terminators. But when it came to their more powerful Psykers, the warp spell just made them even more powerful, and the new boss we have in patch 14, he belongs to that rank of Thousand Suns. And these guys are tasked with leading the dust automaton Terminators we see in the game already, like the missile and power sword guys, and he is also one of the only flesh and blood Marines we actually fight against. But how does he actually play in game? Well, the Chaos Terminator Sorcerer excels at long range and close range combat with some pretty brutal melee combos and laser beam attacks. Now, the first thing I'll be breaking down here is the general melee moveset, and then we'll get into some more specific ways on how to actually counter his toolkit, since he can be cheesed a bit with certain build setups. As far as melee is concerned, this boss will abuse the shit out of his melee combos and incorporate them in various incredibly obnoxious ways, and getting gun strikes on him feels very inconsistent at the moment, but that will likely be fixed in the future. The first and simplest melee attack he has is a forward lunge. He will sometimes use this on its own or at the end of another attack loop, and this one has also been the most consistent for me to actually get gun strikes on. And on top of the lunging attack, he will also have a 2-hit, 3-hit, and even a 5-hit combo that he rarely uses on his Khopesh. But what makes these melee combos unique is that sometimes at the end of his melee combo, he will incorporate an unblockable attack that can be perfect dodge for a gun strike, and then immediately after the unblockable, he will summon a clone of himself to fly out and melee you, which can also be parried or perfect dodge, all while he is busy charging up a delayed laser beam behind the clone to shoot you in the face or another melee attack. This is the combo chain that will likely give players the most trouble, as it is a fairly tight window compared to most combo chains in the game, and the laser beam in general is a very potent attack that we'll get into more later. Beyond these standard melee attacks, he will also occasionally aura farm you with a slow walk while he summons multiple clones to fly out and melee attack you, which can be perfect dodge or parried, and once he approaches the end of his clone summons, he will attempt to get an attack of his own in while you are distracted. Now, sometimes they will fly by you in awkward ways and get a cheap shot in, but for the most part, they are not too difficult to respond to. I have seen him spawn upwards of 7 clones in a row, though this number has not been guaranteed in my experience, but if you do have a block weapon, you will get block charges off every single perfect block on his clones just like a normal enemy. And if you do use your follow-up attack to stagger the actual Terminator boss, it will interrupt any remaining clones he was going to summon. The final melee attack he has is a staff slam that has a small AoE, which can also be perfect dodge for a gun strike opportunity. And he will also occasionally teleport immediately after or teleport directly onto you with this attack, or use a clone that will perform a second staff slam, both of which are fairly easy to deal with. But that is everything for the melee combos. Now it's time to talk about the ranged attacks, or in this case, the single attack, because he really only has a laser beam as a ranged option. It also just happens to be the only ranged attack this boss would ever need, because this laser beam will absolutely stagger and devour any unprepared player, and I expect this will be the #1 complaint from a lot of people on launch. The Terminator Sorcerer will perform his laser beam at both long and occasionally close range, where he winds up his staff before shooting directly at the player. If you don't dodge this, it will knock you over for 5 business days, making it an incredibly obnoxious ability, and this attack also has a fairly significant delay, though once you understand the delay timing, it is fairly easy to dodge since the timing stays exactly the same with no variations. You can also perfect dodge this attack, though on the test server you'll not receive a gun strike despite the sound effect triggering, but that should be completely functional on the main servers. The thing that will actually trip up players is when he uses this simultaneously with his clones, which brings me to the special moves that this boss has access to. The Terminator Sorcerer has 2 distinct abilities independent of his normal combos and clone combos, one of which can be performed at any HP threshold, and the other he will only perform below 50% 80% health. The first special move the Terminator has access to will have him spawn 3 purple orbs above him that will shoot at the player, and they're also very easy to dodge and can also be destroyed by simply shooting at them. The part that can be difficult about this move is that while the orbs are out, he will shoot more laser beams at you, but more importantly, he will also summon multiple clones of himself that will also shoot lasers at you at the same time. Your priority here should be staggering the boss with something like a frag grenade, as this will interrupt his laser beam spam, and if you're unable to do that, you should remove the orbs as fast as possible, engage the Terminator in close range. Now, the final special move he has, he will only perform below half HP. The Terminator boss will attempt to gain distance from the player, and he will then enter an animation crossing his arms together before vanishing and leaving 3 identical clones of himself in his place. The boss will not reappear for around a minute, at which point the clones will disappear on their own, or until you and your teammates destroy the clones themselves. The clones have limited access to the boss's moveset and will only perform his laser attack, melee combos, and teleports. They will not summon clones of their own or purple orbs, and the actual HP value of these clones is identical to a Tyranid warrior, and they function as a standard enemy you can recover contested health from by dealing damage to them. Now, I have a feeling they are going to lower the HP of these clones because at the moment they are incredibly dangerous, especially when combined with the normal reinforcement summons that come alongside the boss. The Majora's level HP feels a little overtuned at the moment, so of all the things attached to this boss currently, independent of some gunstrike opportunities seemingly missing, I think they will probably lower the HP of these clones. And that is everything there is to the moveset of this boss, but now I want to go over some of the easier weapons to deal with him and how to approach him in-game. The Terminator Sorcerer can be found as a randomized spawn in both Operations and Siege mode, and he will spawn alongside normal Extremis and Majora's reinforcements, just like the Hellbrute does, which does significantly increase his difficulty. The silver lining is that he does have a bit less HP than the Hellbrute, and he is incredibly vulnerable to staggering effects like block weapons and grenades. You can also use stuff like the Argent Edge to get a gunstrike on him for every single parry, which I assume will remain the same unless they nerf that weapon at some point. And because of that lower base HP and weakness of stagger, he is pretty susceptible to getting damage nuked before he is even able to spawn his clones, though this will take team coordination in most cases. Staggering effects will also break a lot of his more obnoxious abilities like clone melee spam, and because you can get those block charges off on his clone attacks, I do think they're the overall best option for him outside the Argent Edge. Fencing and balance weapons especially can struggle against this boss since he does stack a lot of awkward melee attacks on you, and when you combine that with enemy reinforcements, it can get pretty diabolical. As far as where you should position yourself despite this boss's teleporting, I find that trying to hug his face and stack block charges or just keeping him in melee combos is the easiest way to deal with him. This lowers the likelihood of him range spamming you and also allows you to stack more damage at close range with weapons like the bolt carbine, as he does have a headshot multiplier just like the normal Terminators do. It also seems like this boss just occasionally likes to vibe and skip normal phases if you stay in his face, so coordinating stagger and melee range of your team is usually a great option. Alternatively, the heavy is actually pretty strong against his range attacks since your Iron Halo straight up stops his laser beam, which normally knocks you over and allows you to get off your full DPS against him instead. And beyond the operations, like I mentioned before, this boss can also be found in the Siege mode where he is incredibly toxic, and bursting him down should be a top priority since he does have access to his entire moveset in this game mode. But that is pretty much everything you need to know about the Terminator boss in Space Marine 2 patch 14 and to have an easier time dealing with him and completing your operations. This boss is also available in the Battle Simulator, so if you want to practice him yourself, that is a great option to do so. And that is all I have to say in this one, guys. Hopefully this guide helps you better understand this boss fight, and if you like content like this, subscribe for more. And if you want to watch me live to ask me questions about the game or just come hang out, you can find me here on YouTube or on Twitch with a link in the video description, and also a link to my community Discord. I also want to say a special thank you to my channel members. Your support helps me make content like this, and I could not do it without you guys. And as always, thank you for watching, take it easy, bye.